Hello, welcome to another YouTube video. So in this video I'm going to be going through everything you would need to know and everything I went through replacing my downstairs floor. So my downstairs floor experienced a lot of damp through various sources. So here's an example. Outside the floor level's too high and it's getting underneath the door, rotting the timber wall plate, and this is all that was left of the timber wall plate. When that was done, I don't know, but I decided to replace it all and then insulate underneath the floor, just because it's an old Victorian house, not insulated at all underneath the floor, and lots of the floorboards were broken, patched in. You can see all these different sections of flooring, mainly due to old renovation works that have taken place in the 120-year life of this house. But just went back, decided to rip it all off, start again fresh, and then only I can be to blame for the quality of the works. So as you can see, I've been lifting the floors, just trying to look for what's causing the damp that I can see coming up the wall, see if there's anything blatantly obvious other than the blown in cavity wall insulation. So there's been some rotting on this joist, very fragile, so that'll need replacing. Been buttered right up to this brickwork, which actually feels quite dry at the moment when you haven't got a glove on, but it might just be because of the weather, and also all the wallpaper's been cleaned off the walls and the brickwork's been exposed. So you can see the tool I'm using here to leverage all these floorboards off. It's great for doing it. It's product names, I've heard them called mammoth bars, pallet busters, but essentially it's a two-pronged leverage bar and it just pries everything apart. It does destroy those wall plates, but I plan to replace them all. Couldn't use the 4x2 floor joists. Most of them again were rotted towards the walls and you could just feel like a sagging in the floor. Plus I wanted to put some PIR insulation in, so they need to be larger than 90 or 100 mil, so going around 120 mil PIR, and that requires a larger timber. The only issue of removing the floor is where it's a high raised door, front door. I have to barrow everything out, up scaffolding boards. It kind of made me wish that I'd done a concrete floor at this point, as I could have left all the material inside and then, other than the wood, and then brought additional material in to create a subfloor structure to pour concrete on. Because you can see here the effort that I have to exert to take one barrow out. Again, this is obviously not a loaded barrow for the example of the run, but yeah, you can see how far up that is. It's like 2 foot. And then you've got the lip of the door, and then as soon as you go through the entrance, you've got to turn and then attempt to run up this next pile that I'm storing for the muck away lorry. So yeah, a lot of effort. And then this section here, the audio went kind of muffled, but you can see how high the floor is here where the back door is. So lots of water's actually been getting through here, rainwater. So I decided to clear it all out as much as I could. It's going to increase the airflow. It's really going to help keep things dry. I'm also reducing the level of the outside space. But yeah, just the extra effort you have to go through barrowing all this stuff out, up and down, up and down, up and down, basically. And just kept doing that on repeat. Decided that most of the pier walls weren't going to stay dwarf walls, so I was going to get those rebuilt. But I'll go into that in a minute. This is my setup in the trenches and how I was working out where to do the dwarf walls to. So I've got a piece of the finished flooring, I've got the 6x2 timber, and then I've got my 4x2 wall plate level to the bottom of the staircase. The staircase currently being propped up by some blocks, so you can see all the spaces, and then I'm going to put some PIR alongside those 6x2s. So the dwarf wall is going to be made out of concrete blocks and engineering bricks, just for the best moisture resistance as such. It'll last the test of time. And yeah, it's about two bricks, but I need to dig down. So you can see here, I had my laser set up and I'm going along with a level. I've got a marking on there of how deep I need to go, because these dwarf walls, they displace all the weight of the flooring above them. So although the flooring isn't obviously as much weight as a house, it's people, furniture, the flooring itself, that weight, it doesn't need to be your 600 footings or anything. So pouring a few inches of concrete, previously they were just sat on dirt, is more than ample for the dwarf walls, especially considering this is pretty hard ground. Yeah, you can see like there's a little bit of the old concrete here, and it takes about 28 days for concrete to reach its full set strength. On this 120-year-old house, there didn't seem to be a full damp-proof course through the hearths, which seemed to be transferring a lot of damp. I guess they call it rising damp, and decided to remove them. The chimney breasts are blocked up on the ground floor level, so they can't be used as proper chimney breasts, like can't get a log burner or anything. So the practical solution was to remove them, then include them in the timber wall structure, dwarf walls, and I can insulate those areas. So I've got my brother in, who's a bricklayer by trade, and he is helping me build the walls. I could attempt to do them, but I'm going to be 4 times slower and not as accurate. So I'm just talking through the plan with him, where I want them set to, and he's going to run his lines. We had the laser set up as well because we're going under staircases. It's just a bit easier. So he's actually running off the laser on this wall, and he got this in real quick. I did decide to change a few things, and he had to reset a couple of these blocks, but yeah, it was much quicker than I would have been. We left some gaps as well within the dwarf wall just to increase that ventilation where there are air bricks, and yeah, he's just running these courses in. There is a footing all the way across here, and he's sitting them on a bed of muck. We did a 3-to-1 mix, so quite a strong mix, but yeah, it's just to displace the weight of the floor. So when I sit the timber structure, the timber floating floor on top, we have no issues. So done it primarily in concrete blocks. There's a few 6-inch concrete blocks as well, and you can see the engineering brick on edge. We added some gaps or engineering bricks on edge just for that ventilation, and yeah, you can see it's turned out quite well. He's had to do some cuts, so some of the dwarf walls are left in place. So I had to do some cuts for him, and then he could sit those on top. And yeah, we managed to get this all done in a morning, and I did pay him, and I did treat him to lunch as well. So it wasn't all bad news for him on his day off. So here's it all done. I allowed it to go off for a couple of days, but you can see the lines, some of them 6-inch blocks, those ones, the engineering bricks and the cuts you can see. And then the 6x2 timber is going to go straight across the top once the wall plate's fixed on. I'm going to do a wall plate with damp-proof course stapled to the bottom of it. But you can see all concrete blocks, and I managed to get it to one course, so I had to dig footings along here. I've just reused the old walls. Some cases I've had to cut down some bricks, but I'm going to have some holes here for ventilation, a bit more ventilation, airflow. Here is a bit of a hybrid job. So I've got engineering bricks onto concrete blocks. There was part of an old pier wall here. Just left an opening here for airflow, put an engineering brick on its edge for airflow as well. There will be airflow over the top, but more airflow the better, as these walls really suffered from damp. You can see here how much the wall's been lost when the plaster came off. Well, it would look like it was rendered in sand and cement, to be honest. But yeah, 4 big piers, or rather 3 big piers, and 4 little ones here, and there's a 5th round the corner. All done. And on to the next job, which is the wall plates. So I set my laser up. I also had to run my damp along the bottom of these timbers. So it's a plastic damp that's stapled on, and that just sits underneath the timber. Then I'm fixing down through the timbers with masonry fixings. So I did have a drill bit, a 6mm drill bit, a brand new DeWalt one. It lasted 8 holes before it gave up. The tip was glowing orange hot and just fell out of the end of the drill bit. But this is me getting them all on. It didn't take more than an hour or so in the evening, and yeah, I'm really happy with the levels. So the green laser line is like, I believe it's around 3mm, 2-3mm thick. You can see it's just right on the edge of these, so they're all within a couple of mil. Really good for flooring substructure. Really happy with this, and yeah, you can see on the level here how close I got it. It's bang on, and that's across 3 of these short walls. So really happy with the job my brother did for me. Yeah, next job, getting all the 6x2s in. So just setting up, working out my lines for my spacings. So getting one as close as I can to that wall, wrapping it in damp. So the ends are being wrapped in damp, and anything that comes near to any brick structure is also being wrapped in damp. And then fixing them down onto those wall plates that I'd set the previous day. And as I go, I'm just checking the level, checking nothing's run out, checking I've not missed anything. But I'm spacing them with noggins, so I'm doing these at 400 centres. And the noggins are going to go in after with the timber rejects, anything that doesn't make the cut. So it's just going up to the tricky bit underneath the stairs. So check my levels again, get these underneath the stairs. The stairs are currently floating, and then I can get the finished floor product, which is 18mm hardwood ply underneath, and then the staircase was supported from then on. So super happy with the floor. Not quite ready for the Stabila challenge, as the noggins aren't in yet, and I need to pull some of these joists down slightly. They're floating like a mill. They're quite bowed. But yeah, pretty happy with the levels. That was a bit clearer. So the flooring was super level. I've used some coach screws. They're turbo coach, I believe they're called, the brand. But they just pull down the timber really well, so to get rid of any of the camber in the 6x2s. And you can see the floor perfect as it leads onto that staircase. So just getting that build up was quite crucial, where I was reusing the old staircase. But yeah, it's quite a repetitive process of just wrapping the ends in DPC. So you just staple them, you sort of do like an envelope. Well, it's like wrapping presents at Christmas, that sort of thing. And yeah, it just prevents any damp getting into the timber, any moisture getting into the timber on the ends where they might be touching against the brickwork, just where these run the full span. But I'll show you one of me a little bit sped up, but not as quick as those time lapses. So just going down, having a look down the timber. I've already been stapled the DPCs cut to length. And then yeah, just want to do a couple of fixings at each wall plate. So just putting in my spacing blocks for those 400 centres. A couple of 90mm nails, or these might have been 70mm ring shanks. I cannot remember, because I know I ran out at one point and I had to transition to different nails. So instead of a smooth shank nail, it was a ring shank nail. But yeah, you want it nice and tight, so when I go across I can just put in all my noggins quite easily. But yeah, just getting that camber out of the timber as best I can, and then firing in a nail. Any that are too bowed, as I mentioned, just put in coach screws, which seem to pull the timber down really well. I've got a nice thick thread on them, and they're like a hex head on them, so I haven't got to worry about stripping the heads. But they really pull down the timber well. So feeling pretty confident with the flooring. Thought I'd go for the old Stabila challenge with my ox levels, my old beaten ox levels. Take 1, Stabila challenge. So this is one of the best time savers I think I have. So you'll start to notice there's a bit of a pattern going on with the noggins. particularly around the chimney breast. You start to see it. They're all in line. There is a reason for this. It's a time saving, along with all the noggings and spacings in between the joists being exactly the same, so I can cut them all in one go. The time saving here is in the PIR insulation board. So if all the noggins are the same distance apart, it means I only need to do one cut on the PIR border. So what I have here is what I think is the ultimate, not £500,000 way of cutting insulation, which is with these jigsaw blades. I'm using the Festool ones. I'm obviously not sponsored by Festool. Using the Festool ones, they look like a bread knife if you're looking really close. These are 155mm, I believe. Yeah, 155mm. And they're a bit more rigid, or at least they feel a bit more rigid than the other ones I've used in the past. And then to go through this, which is 120mm. 120mm. It says on the side somewhere. Can't see it, but off memory it's 120mm. So use chalk line, jigsaw, and ping a chalk line down the insulation board. Go for it with this bread knife jigsaw function, which works really well. It's a barrel grip jigsaw. Doesn't really make a difference for cutting these, to be honest. It's a bit more comfortable on the wrist. That's about it. But yeah, so what I've done, I've spaced the noggins in a way where they're 120mm, which is the thickness here. So I only need to cut the width. So I only need to cut 400 centres with the thickness of the timber being 45mm. I only need to cut 355, and then they should just plop straight in. So I won't bore you to death with me doing hundreds of these, but I'll show you how I do one. So they're all 400 centres, which on these timbers at 45mm works out 355. So just pierce it there, pierce it this other end, get the chalk line. I know. Yep, yeah. Okay. Using these insulation blades, I just like to go through it slowly with a jigsaw. This is a barrel grip jigsaw, so it does look a bit different. It doesn't matter which one you use really. So just work through it slowly, and it allows it stops it diverting and travelling too much, I find. Then you get a squarer edge cut like this one here. As you can see, pretty square cut for a jigsaw. With a blade that long, this is 120mm insulation as well, so I'm really happy with that. This timber was a bit too far gone. You can see it's a banana. This banana had to be used for noggins and also battens, which I'll show you me chopping them up in a second and explain what I'm going to use them for. Yeah, so just going through on the table saw, got them all to size. This is a brilliant bit of kit for repurposing any materials that you have. It is a bit expensive for a DIYer. For this level of table saw, I believe this one was around £400 for a corded one. And they go even more expensive for cordless, but you can get generic brand ones for a lot less if needed. So I'm just about to insulate underneath the floor with a rigid insulation. This is 120mm thick. PIR, PUR, Celotex Kingspan, Unilin. This is going to be my floor setup. So 6x2 floor joists. The insulation will be to the top of it, and then these battens will actually go underneath. I've cut them all down on the table saw, just leftover bits of timber, so like 6x2s, 4x2s, anything that was too short to be a noggin or had a split in it, anything that I found around the house that's really good, and cut it all down into these. Got loads of them. Going to fix them through with this 18 gauge brad nailer, Milwaukee one. It's the best one I've ever used. I don't think there's a better one out there. 18 gauge brad nailer, that is. And yeah, that's what they look like, the brads. Very small. So just fix through into the timber, go around, cut all the insulation, put it in place, and then put the foil tape over the top. This foil tape has like a plasticky backing to it, so it's a lot easier to work with than the one that's like tin foil. So I definitely recommend that. It's, yeah, Ultra Tape from Screw Station. So got the battens, literally just line them up at the bottom. Doesn't need a lot of fixings. I think these are 52mm brads I'm using. These ones, maybe 56mm, who knows. Anyway, more than enough to go through here by about 30mm. Firing in quite deep. I'm just going to put in 4 over this 1.2 metre span. Again, these aren't to be walked on, it's literally just to support the insulation. You get the insulation, which I cut to size a second ago. Should. Might need a bit of persuasion. Don't smack straight into it with a hammer, just dent it. That's one done. So what I like to do is go around any gaps. There's like a little bit of a gap here with expanding foam, and then aluminium foil tape over the top. The aluminium foil tape will make the expanding foam almost like rigid PIR, just for those air gaps. So it's maximising the efficiency of the insulation. Because if you spent all this money on insulation, you want it to work. So yeah, that's the best way to do it. I've seen people using like a foam tape around the edge. Can't remember the product name, Gapo tape maybe. And that allows you to, it's a bit, the foam on the edge of the tape. So you would foam all the outside of these boards and then slide it in. That improves the efficiency of your insulation. Over this expanse, it would have cost me quite a bit to do it. So I'm going to go down the normal method of expanding foam and just try to get the gaps as tight as possible, so I have to foam them a little bit less. You can give the noggins a little bit of a whack, but you don't want to upset them too much. Although the process is pretty repetitive, it's about the challenges that you have in place when you're doing a renovation like this, where your materials being stored in the same place. Some of the materials being a bit too bulky to move on your own, like these sheets of ply, for example. So it's just me going around, doing all the tricky bits by the stairs so I can access the stairwell safely sooner rather than later, and I can move these other materials around. So it's just about juggling materials, a lot of these renovations it seems. Leaving a gap there for when I put in the radiators in the next couple of days. And you can see I've just foamed all those edges with that. It's actually the fire retardant foam, that one. Chip off the excess and then aluminium foil tape on top. Luckily this day I had a couple of people come help for a few hours. So we were able to really get on, put in a lot of this insulation. You can see my friend is just going around fixing on those battens. Try not to have too much of a chinwag, but then yeah, he had to go and I'll just finish these off. You can see I don't need to measure most of them, just because I've maintained that 1200 length and also those 400 centres. That's the flooring done, other than the small section over there, and there's a tiny section here in the bay window. You can let your imagination fly as to what that would be done like. It'll be very similar to the rest of it, but all the insulation was foil tape, as I just showed you, and on top of that I went around with expanding foam as well, if there were any gaps in the Celotex insulation. But yeah, I'm not going to glue the edges of this until I'm 100% happy with all the services when the boiler's actually fitted and up and running. At the moment I've only done a pressure test on the pipes and they seem fine, the flows and the returns, but stuff could get knocked around when I was putting the floor down. Yeah, so I've left it's all hardwood ply. I've left a gap around the edges, like 1 to 2 mil around all the edges. I'm going to PU glue all the edges eventually. But yeah, to allow for expansion and contraction, just because you can get a squeaking, creaking noise. But I'm going to do loads of screws, Spax flooring screws. They're brilliant. They pull the boards right down. And yeah, it feels solid already, even though there's like 4 screws in each board. So just buy some more of them and then it'll be done. However, better than your imagination, I decided to film a quick time lapse of me framing out the bay window section after the water board had been and signed off my new water main.